Hello, everybody. It's Joe, aka NERDFIST. If you haven't seen anything about this yet,
fuck yourself.
I thought this was pretty funny, kind of interesting. The movie director Uwe Boll, who, if you're not familiar with, he's kind of known as the world's worst movie director. He's kind of made some pretty bad movies over the years. Not all of them are that bad. We'll get into that in a minute. But he's kind of been on YouTube, going on rants about the failure of his Kickstarter for the third part of his Rampage trilogy.
Fuck yourself.
And it seems to be a lot of people talking about it, so I thought we'd talk about it because
fuck yourself.
This is going to be hard for me to say, but I do have a bit of a soft spot for Uwe Boll. It's kind of known that I like horror movies, I like trauma movies, I like some bad movies, and I'm not necessarily ashamed of it. It's definitely a guilty pleasure, but some of his movies I actually do really enjoy. The first movie I saw of his was House of the Dead. It came out in 2003, I believe, and I didn't like it. I hated it. It was based on the video game of the same name, and I thought it was horrible. His next movie was Alone in the Dark, which was a little bit better, still not very good, again based on a video game property, which a lot of his movies are. It wasn't very good, but at the time, I really liked some of the people who were in it. I think Tara Reid was in it, if I remember correctly. But it wasn't, it wasn't the worst movie ever made. It was muddled at best, very mediocre, but it was okay. His next movie was Blood Rain, and I actually went and saw it in the theater with a friend of mine. We kind of had a Uwe Boll date, I guess, because we were both, kind of weird fans of his. Even though I hadn't really liked, his movies, I kind of liked that he was, doing his own thing, because for a long time nobody really knew where Uwe Boll was getting the money, to make his movies, because a lot of them were, I don't know if they were flops. They had to have been making money for somebody, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to keep making movies. But because they were, kind of looked at as being so bad, people were wondering, well, who keeps giving him money? How is he raising the money to make these movies? Because some of them have a pretty big, budget, in the millions. I think one of his movies, Return of the King, had a budget of, I think, like 65 or 75 million. So, I mean, they're, technically kind of big budget Hollywood movies almost. But he's kind of making them outside of the regular studio system. And it kind of led to a rumor that, now Uwe Boll is German, you might know by his name. It is a really weird name.
Fuck yourself.
And I forgive me if I'm pronouncing it wrong. I believe that is how you pronounce it. But it kind of led to a rumor that he had either found or inherited Nazi gold, and that was how he was, funding these movies. The rumor has since, died down, and he's actually addressed it, several times. In a weird way, he kind of addressed it in the movie Postal. Well, again, based on a video game property, but he kind of addressed it, kind of. Offhand, he tells a joke about. I think the part in the movie actually takes place in Germany, or maybe it's in America. I can't remember, but he's being questioned about Nazis and World War II and Auschwitz, and he's saying, he's like, why is everybody making such a big deal about the Holocaust? He's like, my grandfather died in Auschwitz. He fell from a watchtower, which is in really bad taste, but it's also, kind of funny too. So I've kind of always had a soft spot for Uwe Boll, and his movies, to me, for the most part, have kind of gotten better over the years. His first couple movies were, kind of crap. I do have some friends that actually like, House of the Dead, but for me, like, Blood Rain was the first of his movies that I actually kind of liked. It's definitely not a great movie. It's okay, and you get to see Kristanna Loken, naked, which was probably worth the admission, the admission price of a ticket. But Postal, which came out in 2007, I actually own. Is one of the only movies of his that I own. I used to own House of the Dead, but I think I sold it. But Postal is actually really pretty good. It's really funny. It kind of blurs the line of almost going too far. Some of the parts in it are kind of in bad taste. Like there's a part, spoilers if you haven't seen it. There's a part where the main character, he's shooting up a place and he stuffs a cat on the end of his gun and uses it as a silencer, which is incredibly violent and kind of gross, but in context to the movie, it was actually pretty funny. And somehow the cat survives. Like, it doesn't seem to bother the cat, and the cat, runs away. Which, again, could have been, a problem. Maybe they should have gotten a better script supervisor or something. Maybe it was a problem in continuity. But the cat does seem to live and runs away afterwards. So, but overall, his movies have kind of gotten better over the years. And his movie Rampage, which came out in 2009, 2010, I really freaking liked. I thought it was really good, even though it's kind of hard to watch. It kind of made me feel a little uneasy just due to the level of violence. And if you haven't seen it, again, spoilers, it's basically about a guy who goes on a rampage. He's a young guy. I think he's college age, 20, 21, somewhere around there. I think he's unemployed in the movie. It's been a while since I've seen it, so forgive me if I'm getting some of the details wrong. But he basically builds an armored suit, gets some guns, and one day goes on a killing spree in his small town and winds up killing like 200 and something people. I mean, he wipes out, just tons of people. There's a scene where he goes into it's like a beauty salon, and he scares all the women and they kind of cower in the corner, and he kind of leaves them thinking that they're all going to survive, and then comes right back in and just shoots like 12 women who are cowering in the corner to death. And it's a little unnerving, and it kind of made me feel a little bit queasy. But as somebody who likes loves movies and likes pushing myself to see what I can take, especially when it comes to horror, because a lot of modern day horror is not very good. And not to launch into a horror debate, but a lot of the paranormal type movies that have kind of become the staple lately, like the Insidious movies and the all these haunting movies and stuff like that, I really just don't care for. I like a movie that's bloody and makes me cringe, and I just like that feeling because it's a feeling I don't get very often. Stuff like the Human Centipede and stuff like that. And even to a lesser extent, a Serbian film, which I don't really enjoy watching. I did watch it, and I thought it was good, but I really don't have any desire to watch it again. But Rampage is kind of on the same page. Rampage. So it's a little bit hard to watch and a little bit unnerving, and it's not for everybody. And the first movie does have a little bit of a message. It's not entirely clear, but it is definitely about consumerism and people just kind of getting lost in their own lives and not taking any pride in their job or just all these different things. But the second movie, the second Rampage movie, which I can't remember what actually is it has like a tagline. I think it's like State of the Union or Address the Nation or something like that. I can't remember. But basically the same character from the first movie who survives the events of the first movie takes over a TV station. And again, he goes on a little bit of a rampage before he does it. Kills a bunch of people, holds a bunch of people hostage, and basically goes on a rant about governments and the NSA and all these different things that we hear about in the news. Well, no, we don't hear about them a lot too often, but stuff like Edward Snowden and whistleblowers, and even though the guy kills a lot of people, he makes a lot of really good points, and I actually agree with pretty much everything he says, other than, he believes the solution is violence. He, wants people to go out there and kill the rich and, hurt people, and, he doesn't believe in, that the same outcome can, come from doing things peacefully. And he might actually have a point, but the third Rampage movie, it kind of leaves it open ended at the end of the second one, and I've really liked the Rampage movies. I would love to watch a third one. And Uwe Boll did a Kickstarter for Rampage 3, and apparently it did not go very well. And he's posted 2 rants really about it. One was about 9 days ago, and the more recent one, it's a little bit longer. But it came out about 3 days ago, maybe 2 or 3 days ago. And the first video, which a lot of people were talking about, I think people are kind of missing the point, because let's face it, English is not his first language, German is. And I think that what he was trying to say is,
fuck yourself.
That he's really ashamed that people are not supporting more original content. I'm hoping that's kind of what I got out of it. He kind of goes on a rant about how,
fuck yourself,
people are throwing all their money, behind Marvel properties and just recycling the same thing that we've seen over and over and over. And he's like, I'm trying to make something different. I'm trying to make something with a message. And he kind of makes it sound like he did not go to Kickstarter. He makes it sound like Kickstarter came to him. He actually says a lot of things about, Kickstarter coming to him and saying, oh, you can, our platform is great for raising money, and blah blah blah, and we take a certain amount. But he kind of made it sound like it was somebody else's idea, and it very could have well been. But at the same time, he wasn't asking for much in the Kickstarter. And I haven't actually looked at the Kickstarter, but I do know that it was only asking for about $55,000 to make Rampage 3, which doesn't seem like a whole lot, because these movies, Rampage 1 seems a little bit bigger in scope than Rampage 2. Rampage 2 kind of takes place, all in one room within a TV station. But I would assume that it would need a little bit more than $55,000 to make it. I would figure at least probably $1 million. But I assume that it had, stretch goals and stuff like that, and they probably wanted to make a little bit more than, $55,000. But it did raise, at the time of him posting the first video, they were at like 35-something thousand, and that's not far away from the 55,000. So it kind of seems like he kind of jumped the gun with putting up a rant, but I kind of see his point. Sometimes it is disconcerting, and it is something that a lot of, especially movie fans, talk about sometimes, is, why are there so many remakes? Why are they remaking this? Why did they remake RoboCop? Why did they, making a remake of, Nightmare on Elm Street? Why are there so many remakes? And, how come it seems like all the, the movies we're getting are the comic book movies, or, movies that are a sequel to a, already existing property, and now we get sequels like, that are 20 years old. They're talking about a new Independence Day movie that, has just went into production, and of course the Jurassic World comes out this week, which I'm actually kind of looking forward to.
Fuck yourself.
But I kind of understand his point. It seems like there's no room for new original things, and getting money for these new IPs is hard. It's hard work, and I can understand him getting a little bit angry about, especially on Kickstarter. He goes off on, how it looked like, people were putting their money to. He talks about like 2 wizards in the woods. Why would you give $600,000 to 2 wizards in the woods when you could be giving, money to Rampage? And it's really funny. Most of it is funny because, of his broken English and the way he says things.
Fuck yourself.
In the second video, he really goes off on like Brad Pitt and George Clooney, and he holds up a magazine at one point, and he's like, oh, these are all your idols, and, blah, blah, blah. And even though I don't, I don't really know if his heart is in the right place. Some of what he says, I do agree with, and I agree with him on a lot of things. That I do think that some celebrities, don't live in the real world, and he kind of points that out a little bit. He talks about, I guess, he kind of, it to me, it sounds like he's saying that he's had these personal experiences where he's talked to, famous people, and they kind of make fun of the everyday person because they only make $2,000 a month, or they're having a hard time getting by and stuff like that, and they're cruising around in private jets, and he talks about his Darfur movie, which I haven't seen, but he talks about how it was completely overlooked, and George Clooney makes a crappy documentary about it, and it gets nominated for an Oscar or something. So I kind of see where he's coming from.
Fuck yourself.
Although being who he is, I don't. It kind of seems like he's not living in the real world. He doesn't know his own reputation. It seems like, but. That kind of surprises me because Uwe Boll has kind of went above and beyond what most directors do as far as combating their critics. I mean, because several years ago he actually challenged several of his critics to a boxing match because some of his critics were giving him these horrible reviews, and some of them were saying if I ever met Uwe Boll I would punch him in the face. He's like, fine, let's do it in a boxing ring, and he completely wiped the floor with him. It was hilarious. One of the people, like, this little, cheesy, rat-esque, movie critic, goes down in like one hit. And not saying that I'm a tough guy, I'd probably go down in one hit too. But you don't talk shit and then get in a ring if you don't know how to fight. And Uwe Boll just makes them all look, like like pansies. And the first guy, he winds up like throwing up. Like they have a shot of him outside after the match, and he's puking his guts out, because he probably has a concussion or whatever. And Uwe Boll is just, standing in the ring, having a good old time. So it is a little bit funny that this has happened, and I can sympathize with him a little bit. I do think that these rants are entertaining, and maybe that's the point. Maybe these rants are a way for him to kind of, bring exposure to some of these things, and sometimes bad publicity is just as good as good publicity. I mean, is that old saying, publicity is publicity, all, bad press is good press. If they're just talking about you, at least you're in the news, you're part of the conversation, you're part of pop culture, and maybe these rants are a way to kind of bring more eyes his way, and it definitely seems to have worked. I mean, a lot of people are talking about it, a lot of movie sites are talking about it, and I just thought it was funny. So if you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out. And I hope that there's a Rampage 3 because I would like to see it, and I wish I had known sooner that there was a Kickstarter for it. I might have given some money, but I didn't. And so Uwe Boll, if you're out there and you're listening, I'm a fan. I haven't liked everything you've done, but I've liked enough, and I hope you make Rampage 3. All right, everybody. That's enough. That's enough from me about Uwe Boll. Tell me what you think about the controversy in the comment section, and like and subscribe, and I will talk to you later. Bye, everybody. Bye. Bye-bye.
Fuck yourself.